YouTube, Miss Covered in Paint here with a new episode of Critique Me Not. Today we'll be redrawing one of my drawings from when I was 12 years old, and you can see here that it's got a classic case of pizza syndrome. In case you're joining us today and you don't know what pizza syndrome is, it's when you draw an anime face and it looks like a pizza, like so. Here I'm correcting the anatomy of this original drawing that I did when I was young. And I'm just kind of giving you guys a heads up over why this pose doesn't work. It's really stiff, the body's twisting in an uncomfortable, unnatural way, the limbs are not curving correctly, and she's like sleeping but smiling, and this moon, why is it curved this way? I mean, everybody knows it has to look like the DreamWorks logo, right? So let's see how not like the DreamWorks logo I can make this pose, because yeah, there's a lot of people sitting on the moon out there. You can go look it up on Google, there's tons of drawings, and I wanted mine to look unique. So to start off, I started brainstorming poses and ways you can sit on the moon. This guy's playing video games, this person has got their like feet up on the back of it like they're reading a book, I don't know. But it turns out, surprise surprise, that I like the first idea best, which usually isn't the case, but whatever, I was ready to go this morning. Here I am setting up my rule of thirds. This will help me come up with like a more balanced and dynamic composition. And this can be really fun. So all you do is go to the crop tool if you don't know how to identify the rule of thirds. Don't crop your picture though, but then just take the guides and drag them over to where the marks are. And then as you can see here, you've got guides for the rule of thirds, and wherever they intersect, that's where you want to have your focus. Right now I was trying to figure out doing the pose in a horizontal composition, but it turns out that the pose would work better in a vertical composition, which you're going to see me change here in a second. Right now I'm working on feet. You know, you have to draw them just right. I've looked up pictures of people laying on their back with their feet kicked up, and now I'm blocking out the silhouette so we can really clearly see if this pose is readable or not. And I really like how the ankles are crossing in this picture. I feel like that really made the pose for me. So now I'm tilting and I'm trying to see how I want this composition to be, how I want the weight of it to be. And yeah, I think this turned out way better. It gives it more space. It makes it feel like we're up in the air. So here I am blocking out our initial sketch pose. So this is kind of a different way that I usually work. But yeah, I just blocked out the silhouette and now I'm kind of sketching. This is not the final inking. This is like the sketch of what the pose is going to be like now. So we've got this girl here and she's sleeping on the moon because, you know, it's nighttime and that's when you're supposed to go to bed. And of course, if you were a personified moon character, you would probably be really tired because you spend the whole night awake. And so you'd fall asleep on the job. Yeah, you'd get fired. She's getting fired. So here we go. Making the moon round here. I'm using a circle tool and then I'm going to go in through the transform panel and I'm going to adjust this curve to fit more of like what I originally drew. You can see that the weight of this like curve, just how turning the composition over makes a huge difference in how this pose feels and how dynamic and stiff, I guess, the pose is. I decided to change the arm. Yeah, my friend, she had a great suggestion when I was showing her the picture. She's like, why don't you have her arm reaching out? Because she has her arms hanging in the original piece and it kind of gives it more of an S curve. This is too much of an S curve. And it can really make a big difference in the feel of the pose. So here we have her arm reaching out and it just branches off. So I'm going through with the warp tool and I'm trying to move my circle, but it got too weird. So I would recommend using the distort tool, and that helps kind of shape the circle without making it warped and ripply. You want to make sure that the edges are still smooth and clean, and you can always go through and change the line work, you know, on your own here. So I'll erase what I want and then just like, oh look, the moon comes to an end there and not up there. Perfect. So now I'm going to ink in that hand. Sketch it in, I guess I should say, more like. And she's just like reaching out, and I'm just playing with like the composition and what I want it to be like. I was kind of thinking it'd be cool if it was like some water or clouds that she was playing with her fingers while she's sleeping. But yeah, the overall balance of the composition is really cool. Alright, so now we're gonna go in and figure out what I'm gonna do with this dress, because I want it to be kind of a, what is it, Art Nouveau kind of feel to it, but not exactly. Like, I'm not gonna go into that much detail of fabrics and patterns and things. So I was just looking at Art Nouveau for drapery or dress ideas, and yeah, use reference. Even if you're just being inspired by it and you're not copying it, that's great. Yeah, so I'm going through, playing around, thinking of ideas. I don't know, what do you guys do to think of ideas? I was listening to the Final Fantasy soundtrack while drawing this, which was really nice because I really like Final Fantasy. And yeah, so I was totally thinking of Final Fantasy X, 2, and all the dress spheres and like all the costumes they have, and I was like, oh, I should probably be more costume inspired, because this outfit in the original sketch is actually based off of Yuna's outfit with the ombre like pink gradient thing, and if I ever colored the piece, I would want to probably incorporate that into her costume, but for now I was just keeping it black and white. So we're ready for inks, and now that I've got my sketch officially kind of officialed out, I'm going to go through with another layer and clean it up. And you can see that I'm just going through with a much thinner pen and just going through and solidifying all of the line work. So you'll notice I try to give the lines a bit of variation so that you really have a sense of what's forward, what's backwards, what's receding and coming towards you like in space. And that takes some time, but it's easier to do if you start out with a thinner brush than if you have a thicker brush. You'll notice a lot of my work tends to be a little heavy-handed just because I forget to tone down my brush to a smaller size. And it's an easy fix digitally, so yeah. Cleaning everything up. I drew it all on the wrong layer. I drew it on the moon layer. I need to be on the girl layer. Alright, so we're going through with her hair, and you'll notice that I'm just making like really smooth, thick to thin, very delicate like lines, and it's all really about design. There's not really an answer to how do you know where to put the lines. It's just like you have to eyeball it and say, does that look like the hair that I want it to? Alright, now we're going in with the drapery, which is a lot like the hair. You'll see that it's like really smooth, graceful lines that are like thin to thick, and just enough thickness to give you an edge to the fabric to make you feel like, again, that there's folds and not just lines. Usually you can do that by going thin, thick to thin again in the line. You'll see it taper at the ends. That kind of makes the fabric just have the right feel. Alright, we're bringing this up. I'm trying to figure out the fold lines for around her knees. So right now it's kind of an awkward crop because the knees are a joint, so you don't really want to have lines cutting off the knees. And so that's why I made the fabric come over her legs without having all those bunched folds there anymore. It was drawing too much attention to the joint there, so it was kind of like a tangent. Distraction tangent. Alright, we're doing it in the toes, which took me a while because I was like, which way's the foot? Is it the pinky toe? Is there that like little bone sticking out there? And I believe it is the pinky toe. I hope it is. I hope I didn't draw her feet backwards. But if it is, you know, she's from the moon. She can have backwards feet. Alright, so I'm pretty much done with her body, and now I'm moving on to this arm. And she's got these like little sleeve things on, but I didn't want to have them draping. I didn't like the idea of having them. It would be too much like hanging fabric, and I want this to be very light flow, and I just like that one piece of fabric draping, so I just kept her sleeves tight to her arms. Dun, dun, dun. Hands. And you'll notice when I go through with the hands, I'm really just capturing like the shape and like the curves. Overall too, when you learn to draw people, there's like this really cool trick to drawing like curve to straight underneath, and it's used a lot in animation. I definitely would recommend this book called Force, and it has pretty much that subject, curve to straight line kind of deal. I don't see any examples because we're sped up here to show you guys, but if you look at how I drew her, you'll definitely see that for every straight line there's a curve on the other side of it. So for example, like her tummy would be like a straight, but then she's got the curve in her shoulder to her butt, and that would be like an example of curved on one side but kind of straight on the other. So her tummy's straight and then her back is curved. But you do that for like everything, like the arms and the fingers and the feet, and it really adds like a flow and dynamism to your work. Alright, so here I'm trying to figure out clouds. I was like, I'm pretty much done. I need to get the work done. But I wanted this piece to be standalone, and I know that was a big thing that came to me when I was like young and trying to learn how to draw pieces that could like in class. And part of it is black placement. You know, if you did a sketch, like right now it's like, oh, this is a nice line work drawing, but it's not finished. Like it needs to be colored, or it needs black placement pretty much. And you'll see once I start adding black, the piece really holds its own. So I made another copy of the original line work, and then I went through with the select tool and I just selected some of these little areas, and then I modified my selection and I constricted it, I think is what it was, a couple pixels, so that there's now a nice consistent white line around my line work, so you can actually see my line work and it's not invisible. But yeah, just look at how much of a difference having that black fill makes. The piece feels much more solid. And here I'm doing clouds, so she's like above the clouds, kind of like when you're in the airplane and you see all those clouds underneath you. It's like a sea. So I'm trying to capture the silhouette, and I really need thin line work, so I'm going to go through and refine all the edges while giving them variation, but it has to be very slight because the clouds have to be wispy and thin and light and fluffy, and if you have thick lines, it won't make it feel like a cloud, it'll make it feel like a chunk of dirt or something. So it's really cool to see how this all balances out the composition. And originally I wanted her to be kind of playing with clouds, but I guess it works out to have her just like reaching towards a point that's really close. Now I'm adding in the stars, and when you do stars, it's really important to have them in clusters that don't look like a pattern, but then also they need to be different sizes, and they need to be kind of, I don't know, look at real stars. Look at the sky at night or on the internet. I didn't use reference here, but I've done a lot of star pieces before, so I would say that I'm okay with making it up as I go now. But yeah, I still remember learning to do stars. It takes a while. And yeah, just remember to put some bigger ones in there because it's easy to like get to the same size over and over again. And once you've got the variation, you'll definitely have a spacey kind of scene. So here you can see the piece is pretty much done. And I'm pretty happy with it. Compared to this original one here, a little too much on the moon. And I don't understand what's coming from her hands, but whatever. At the time, I thought it was a great picture, and it's really fun to redo it now. I think it's been like 12 years later. So yeah, here's our redo, and you just see that the overall figure looks believable, realistic. There's weight to her. She's not just kind of like somehow magically on the moon. We can see how she fits, how her weight is being like distributed, and the overall composition just has a great feel. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed and learned something new from this episode of Critique Me Not. I'll see you guys next week with another skit. Bye!